You must be careful about the words you use, or the words you allow to be used in your house. Words are things. You must be careful. Careful about calling people out of their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that.
It's time to talk about it.
Pull up a chair and take a seat.
We're serving up recipes for life.
With Hampton University's Dr. Richard Mason and Dr. Tamara Williams.
Welcome to the Sunday Brunch.
This is Dr. Tamara Williams.
And this is Dr. Richard Mason. And welcome back to the table for another edition of Sunday Brunch with the Good Doctors.
The good doctors.
How's it going, sis? How you been?
It's been a busy week, but I feel like that's what we say every week.
It seems like it. It's like, when is it not busy? So that's the piece that I'm always constantly thinking, next week is going to be better. I'm going to have a little better handle on next week. But it looks like next week looks like last week.
And the week before that, I'm trying to get better and more purposeful on not putting too much on my agenda, but I feel compelled a lot of times to do more than I should. I don't even like to use the word should, but I feel compelled to do more sometimes. And I don't, I feel like I want to be in certain places to help and assist in certain ways. And sometimes I really do outstretch myself.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things I realized. I was just having this conversation with someone yesterday. The times that we're in, we are called, because of our areas of expertise and our specialty areas and all, we are certainly called to deal with people in some of the crises that they find themselves in. And everyone is just trying to figure these things out, and how to manage in this new world order, should I say. It's just different.
New old world.
Yeah, it's different, and you're right when we say new old world, because it seems like we're going backwards. We're not progressing in so many areas, which is sad.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Listen, but I'm glad that we do get to continue to have these conversations. And I am really excited about our conversation today. I think that you will enjoy our conversation, and hopefully our listeners will as well, because it's a meaningful conversation. And we often do talk about mental health. We often talk about how our lives impact ourselves. But today I wanted to bring back the conversation with a veteran and talk a little bit more about like what happens when you're in leadership and then you're no longer in the military. How do you then pivot? How do you then refocus? How do you then still find the things that are meaningful in life to keep your purpose going? We have a lot of veterans who, when they come back, are not always finding places for themselves, or find themselves not feeling fulfilled in many different ways. So I'm excited about this conversation.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was just having this conversation, as a matter of fact, with a veteran, just in terms of just what do you do to now find your new normal. You lived a certain way for a certain period of time, but now you're out in the civilian world. And how do you manage this situation? Ironically, this person is a teacher, in the public school system, and just talking about how different it is teaching kids in the public school than it is dealing with soldiers, and so it's like, hey, how do you navigate these waters? And, I told him, I said, whereas you had, from a military perspective, I would say you have institutional protocols, whereas in the civilian world, you have to have classroom management skills. It's totally different, but it's not that these waters cannot be navigated successfully. You just have to figure out which path to take and go from there. So it's definitely a great conversation to have, because it's not only affecting folks in and out of the classroom, but just in your day-to-day living, and how do you now navigate this new normal, and then a part of it that we talk about, and maybe we'll touch on a little bit today too. Some of it is also you're still grieving that situation that you had to now turn away from, that you've known for a large majority of your life. If you've done 20 years or 25 years in the military, it is normal to grieve that situation.
Listen to me. I only did my 1 year. and it was no grief. There was zero parts of grief. But what is so interesting about the conversation is in that 1 year, I have told you guys before about how traumatizing that was. And I brought to the table today the traumatizer himself when he talked about training with the Marines. I want to introduce to everybody the Marine that I was training with many moons ago. And it's nice that we hooked back up recently and things have gone full circle to where, I'm still traumatized by all of his teaching and his PT, but physical training that we had to do. But I have been blessed by the conversation about the aftermath. He was able to tell me some things that I dodged by getting out. And then he was also able to share with me, some of the growth parts. And so I don't want to waste any more time because we're going to need all of our time for our guest today. So I want to welcome to the Sunday brunch table, Dr. Nkosi Leary. Welcome to Sunday brunch.
Yes, welcome to the table.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here at the table.
We're running, though. I'm just telling you right now, we're not running today.
Not running today? I was
not today.
After the meal, we can go for a nice little light jog. 3 to 4 mile jog. If anybody's interested in that, right afterwards.
No, we're not interested in that.
You're not? Okay.
No, most folks know if I'm running, somebody chasing me. All right.
And they know me. Even if a dog is chasing me, we're gonna have to stop and talk about it. There will be no running. I will join you with a brisk walk.
Okay, good. We can do that. Just kind of get the heart rate up just a little bit.
Let's not sing those chants from them times ago.
If y'all say so. But I tell you, it's so good to put a face with the storyline because I've heard so many stories about the traumas that somebody, I will leave nameless, they endured at some point in time.
At a young age.
It's a culture shock.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And when I saw him at reunion, it was indeed that, a culture shock. I had to ground my feet. I was like, all right, you're no longer in training. He's not so scary in a suit outside his Marine uniform.
Yes, there was a lot of physical training that was going on. We would wake up in the wee hours of the morning and just run through the Atlanta University Center, trying to be as loud as we could to wake up students in the dorms. We would start at Morehouse track, and then from there, I used to have this program called Follow Me, where you just had to keep up to whatever I was doing that day.
Yeah.
I look back on it, I was like, man, it probably was a little bit tough for people.
You think?
I would just take off running.
Amazing, personally.
Yeah, and then had you running the bleachers as well. Yeah, that was those were fun times, wasn't it?
I have other adjectives that I like to describe those times. But what I can say, all jokes aside, is that they're character building times. And far removed from them times, I'm thankful now. In the midst of those times, I was not really thankful nor really appreciative of it at the moment because I was caught up in what was being required of me. And at that time, it felt like it was more than I wanted to give, but I was grateful because I was able to see it and witness it for myself. So sometimes people, they have to try things out for a long period of time before they know whether or not it's a good fit for them. I was a fast learner. I knew as soon as you dropped me off at the barracks in Florida and you were running around saying blood makes the grass grow, that was not the place for me.
That wasn't it?
That wasn't it, and I knew what the purpose was. And I knew that it was an amazing opportunity for a lot of people. And the type of discipline that was required was the type of discipline I had within myself, but I didn't want to do those type of things with that. So I really, I salute all of those who were able to not only just survived that process, but many of you thrived in that process. And it taught me early on that what's for everybody doesn't necessarily have to be for you.
Right.
Definitely so. So let's back up a little bit. Tell us about a little bit about yourself and your career path, Doc, and how did you come to that place of creating such havoc in the lives of our youth?
Well, I graduated high school in 1991, and I had a strong father in my life. You know, I lived with my dad. I grew up with my dad, and he was one of those men that was always in the community being helpful. So wherever he went, he brought his boys with him. You know, I a younger brother as well, and we always were in the church, and he had us taking care of anybody who needed assistance in the church. We would be there, whether it be mostly it seemed like it was yard work, helping people move, different things like that. We played football. He was a tough man, and one of the things I always recognize about him, you know, when I would go to bed needing something, by the morning it was there, ready to go. Whether it was homework assignments or whether it was a plan of the day, he would leave for work and have a list of things for us to do with times. It'll be like 6 o'clock in the morning, wake up. From 6 to 6:30, get breakfast, and from this time to this time, go work out. And then we would go work out, and we had a shed in the back that was our workout room. We go to the workout room, and there was another list of different things: power cleans, 3 sets of 10s, bench press, 3 sets of 10. So it was always mapped out what we were going to do on a schedule from a day-to-day basis. So when it came time to graduate, it was almost I didn't really think about it because it was something that was innate. It was just something that has been drilled in me. The next step was the military. And I remember I was going to join the Navy, and I did all the processing work. And I walked out of the Navy office and, you know, one of the strip malls, and I walked by the Marine Corps office, and I remember looking at him, and I was like, oh. And there was a Marine standing in the doorway in his uniform. His uniform was crisp. It looked like it was painted on. And I asked him, I was like, hey, you're the Marines. And he was like, yep. And I said, the Marines is the toughest branch, isn't it? He's like, yep. And I was like, I think I might have joined the Navy. Can I switch to the Marines? He said, yep. And I remember his name was Sergeant Mark Moss. And that was the beginning of me getting ready to join the Marine Corps while I was still a senior in high school. I remember I would do a lot of running on my own, and he would only bring me out to just do the physical fitness test. But I knew that was something that I wanted to do, but didn't really know that it was going to be the military as far as being organized, something that was structured and like kind of like an extension of what your parents had done in the home. And so my military career took off right out of boot camp. I became a flight engineer on helicopters, and I served for 5 years in the Marine Corps before I went to Morehouse. So when I got there, of course, I was an active duty Marine, and they assigned us opportunities to help train new midshipmen that were coming into the program, and that's where Dr. Williams comes in at, and we had to get her where we needed her to be as far as that military mindset. So that's where
You still laughing.
all those opportunities to hear our different chants and war cries and different things like that. Some things that we can't even chant anymore. We can't even say those sayings anymore. So
Good.
it's a different time now. So it's a lost art.
I call it something different. I'm glad that you can't say that anymore. Words mean a lot. I want to know what words mean a lot. They define so many different things, including our realities. And so I was taking in the words. And where a lot of times people sing lyrics and they take no thought as to what they were singing, I was hearing all the words, and the math was not mathing for
Oh yeah, it's because sometimes we don't listen to the lyrics, but we listen to the beat, and
Right.
then the marine or it's a cadence, and
Right.
it's to keep you in step. So when you go deep into the thought process of what they're actually saying, yeah, you can get caught up into that. But I really need you to be on in step with the person next to you and in front of you, regardless of what's being said.
And that's kind of how I tripped up and fell.
And you heard what was being said.
Yes, I was in my head about what was being said. And I felt like, I was like, wait a minute. Did they just say, did he just sing? And I don't care if it is in tune. Then you're supposed to repeat back what he said to you. And I was in the name of Jesus.
I don't agree to that part.
In the name of Jesus and all this high and holy. And I tripped and fell. So I said, the campus is no place for a champion. I got to stay up off this ground. So I had to find other ways to win. It was a life-defining moment. Like I literally had a full ride to school because of the Navy, and it was an amazing opportunity. Spelman does not give out scholarships like that. And so it was a blessing in that regard. I was a 17-year-old student, and I was trying to figure out who I was and whose I was outside of what someone else had defined for me. And so I felt that if I paid for my school my way, then I could live my way and be my way and grow my way. And so I was running from my parents, but I found a bigger parent in the government.
And you didn't realize that running from your parents, you were jumping literally out the frying pan into the fire at that point.
Let me tell you who I called.
At 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes. No, and guess what? It was before 5. We were out there before 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's when I knew that was like, not of God.
Well, Doc, first of all, Doc, thank you so much for your service.
Yes.
I know some people may take that for granted, even when we have jet noise and everything in this area and all, we are a heavily military population. But thank you for your service, because I've worked with a lot of military families over the years, and I see a lot of the challenges that they go through with the deployments. And then, of course, when you've had any type of active times of war, especially some of the things that our veterans have gone through and how it changes the family. So it's not just you enlisting in the military or joining the ranks of the military, but it certainly is the family who's doing the work. And so thank you certainly for your commitment. As I always talk about our veterans in this area and our active duty military personnel, that's one of the first things I let them know. I truly appreciate what they do. It's one of those things, they keep the watch at night so that we can sleep. And that really does mean a lot to me and this community. So thank you so much for all of that.
My pleasure. But even like all good things, it comes to an end, and you have to retire at some point. You get into that space where you got to find something else to do. But, thank God for our families that are, that are maintaining and supporting us from home while we're deployed. And a lot of times, the families didn't sign up to be single parents. But in fact, you're a single parent while your spouse is away, and you're at home dealing with the child or what have you. And then when you come back, there is an adjustment period that need to be considered. They have been handling things in your absence. And once you return, you can't just jump back into the role that you were in when you left. You kind of got to ease your way back into it. So there are lots of challenges that come with being deployed and leaving your spouse at home, and then you have to rejoin the family. And those are the type of things that can really put a lot of pressure on the family on what your role is now, because they've been doing things without you. Now, if you don't give that time to happen, that transition period, And I believe it takes like a month to 3 months or so to kind of, massage yourself back into the family
Mm-hmm.
fold. But having to do that on a regular basis, 6 months here, 8 months there, every other year, or something of that sort, it
Mm-hmm.
takes its toll on the military family. So to be able to maintain that relationship, that family dynamic, while one of the spouses is going through deployment after deployment, I mean, that's phenomenal for them to hang in there like that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's truly a lot of work, and I'll tell you, when you mentioned like 3 months, 6 months, and all. I've seen families where it takes them a little longer, and by the time they get into their rhythm and into their groove, they get orders to deploy again or even to move. We're leaving this location as soon as, from a child's perspective, you've been able to establish some roots, you've met some friends, and hey, Dad, I'm cool in this area. The kids like me here. And now, well, guess what? I just got new orders. We're leaving Virginia. We got to go to Michigan. So it's like, wait a minute, now I got to start all over. So in a lot of cases, working with some of the military families that I see, I work with them in dealing with resilience. And they are some of the most resilient kids that are out there, and when we talk about all of their social emotional stuff that they go through, fortunately now, I think times are a little different now when we're looking at our ability to interact with Zoom and video conferencing and stuff like that or whatever. It's more of an opportunity for kids to keep in touch with people that they have met um, over the course of some of their travels and moves and things of that nature. Even in addition, just depending upon where a person may be stationed, your military parent, they can still reach back out and you can see their faces versus it's always a letter or something like that or whatever. I know there's some secure places that you just cannot video conference from. But it does make it a lot easier, and I know I've worked with some of the military families that we've actually done some rejoining while they're still away, doing group sessions and doing family sessions, online where they can see each other and we can talk about what's been going on and they can keep up with what's been happening in the family and stuff like that. And mom in some situations or dad and in others can still feel connected to their family back home. So it really has it's changed, and I think technology has certainly been a key factor. But those are still some tough hurdles to jump over when it comes to just the deployments and the moves from duty station to duty station.
Yes, I remember my one of my last deployments to Iraq in 2007 and 2008. They needed me to go to Iraq and to join another flying squadron. And I was all for it, but at the same time, I found out my mother had terminal cancer.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
it was a tough decision to be made at that juncture. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, Mom, they want me to go to Iraq. And she said, but I want to be here with you. And she said, Baby, there's nothing you can do for me.
Mm.
You still need to have a career. She said, Don't worry. I will be here when you return.
Hmm.
And I returned to my command. It's like, hey, I'll go do this. And I found myself in Iraq, and Zoom calls wasn't out yet.
Mm.
So a lot of the times, my mother's, has terminal cancer. So I couldn't see or talk to her as often as I would want to, or even most times at all. And I found myself, in combat. Um, I would cry every day and then get myself together and then go fly my missions. And my missions consisted of picking up troops, dropping them off at different strategic locations, or flying top brass or like your generals or so from different locations, and then also the wounded as well as the dead from place to place. And this was on a regular basis. And not only that, being in part of the air crew and flying in helicopters, we were constantly being shot at by rocket propelled grenades, RPGs, if you will, and small arms fire. So sometimes you can see the tracer rounds, sometimes you can just see the rocket heading towards you, and you had to, one, pay attention. That's not the time to just doze off and get tired and a little bit sleepy and
And be in your thoughts.
Right, and be in
Mhm.
your thoughts. So one of the things I had to exercise is cry for mom early, get all that out, and it's nothing I can control anyway. But I had to tighten it up and lock in before I flew my missions. And it's just one of those things. I remember I wasn't dating. I didn't have a girlfriend, wife, or anything at the time. And
Mhm.
I was just out there just dealing with my emotions and dealing with the fact that my mother is passing away soon. I remember we had a return date of March 2008, and I knew that March 2008 that my life was going to be different. And a lot of times you don't know those dates and when things is going to be drastically changed for you. But I knew by March 28th that my mother wasn't going to be here, or I wasn't going to be here, or both of us was going to be gone by March 28th. So you don't
Mhm.
plan anything on March the 29th
Mhm.
and forward until you get through what you're going through now. And it would have been great to have some sort of Zoom call or what have you. But at the same time, considering that it was affecting me so much, I don't think it would have been a good idea for me to be abreast on everything that was going on with my mama's life when I'm fighting for my own life out here in Iraq. And that's one of those tough things. And I remember my brother and sister doing a really good job of not keeping me informed, which I appreciate to this day because I think being able to focus on the job at hand enabled me to be successful while I was out there because I came home and spent time with her and laughed and joked with her before she passed. I remember
Yay.
one
Mhm.
touching thing she asked me, so let me see the obituary that you guys wrote about me. I'm like,
Oh,
Mom,
that's got to be your mom. Oh my word.
my mom asked me that. I was like, Mom, we haven't written it yet. And she was like, why not? And I gave her the look like, because
Is still living?
Right.
still alive, we still have hope. And she was just like, oh, okay. I was like, what the- how do you deal with that? I'm glad she still had a sense of humor
Mm-hmm.
till the end. But my own psychological effects is when she did finally pass. We had the funeral, and I remember thinking to myself, like, I had suppressed those emotions for so long,
Mhm.
day after day, crying and suppressed, that when the
Mhm.
funeral actually happened, I was all cried out.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to. I remember at the funeral, I had no more tears. But at the same time, I'm conscious of the people that are around me. And I'm like, you know what, brother, you better muster up some tears. This is your
Because
mom.
you're looking like a whole Marine out here.
I'm looking
Right.
crazy in a lot of ways. Like, so I remember I mustered up some tears. Not that I'm not sad for my mom. I just had to deal with this every
Right.
single day in a high stakes environment that when
Mhm.
it was low stakes, I didn't have to worry about it so much. Because even though I'm worried about my mom, I'm worried about my own life.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think I was going to, to live, especially when they said, after the funeral, I started crying and everything. I remember people in conversation saying, "Oh, and Kosi's crying now," and
Mhm.
I was like, "Okay." And then I got a phone call that said, "Hey, Leary, we need you to come back to Iraq."
Mhm.
Now, what I didn't tell you was that before I went to Iraq, not only was my mother diagnosed with terminal cancer, my neighbor and I, we bought our houses around the same time frame. We were both Marines. And he and I were going to deploy to Iraq. He was going to leave first, and then, my unit would come after his.
Mhm.
And this man went to Iraq. I remember we had a going away party for him and everything. And he went to Iraq. He went and came back before I even left. And
Mhm.
both of his legs have been blown off.
Quit playing with me.
Mm-mm.
Mm.
My neighbor, my neighbor lost both his legs before I even left. And I remember going outside to see him in the car, and he wasn't even able to get into his home because there wasn't a wheelchair ramp or any type of wheelchair accessories that would allow him to walk in or get into his house because of the incident. And now I had somewhere to be that day, and I couldn't do anything but go back into the house and just fall on my face because I just watched a friend of mine leave and come back before I even left, losing both of his limbs. And not only that, I've also watched on video other friends of mine get shot down in the same helicopter that I was in before I left. So the gravity of what I had to carry going into combat, my friend losing his legs, other friends of mine watching them on video because the enemy recorded it and put it on YouTube.
Oh, my
See
word.
the whole thing, and
Mm.
then I'm next.
Mm.
So when I say that March 28th of 2008 was going to be different from me, that was a real thing. So I made it the first few months and survived and buried my mother. And then that one call, because I didn't think I had to go back, but that one call said, "Hey, we need you back." And
Hmm.
I remember looking at my brother and I told him they want me to go back, and I just
Mm.
said, "Just bury me next to mom," and that's it. And I went right.
Nicosi.
Yes, I did. Told him to bury me next to mom, and I went back to Iraq. And I remember going back to Iraq; it was worse the second half. And I remember videotaping some of the things that I was doing casually, just in
Hmm.
case something were to happen. There was some video of me in that arena, just walking around, looking, doing things, pre-fighting the aircraft. And I even have video of me shooting the machine guns out the window as well. And just to kind of have some video footage just in case they found me and they found, the video or what have you, they would have something. My kids would be able to see something that daddy was doing in Iraq. But God had a different plan.
Hmm. Hmm.
His plan was for me to
A better plan.
uh,
I appreciate that plan.
to come back home. And I'll be honest with you, the way that I live my life, and I'm not perfect, but I live my life that because I had the opportunity to return, I don't get to just be regular. I don't get to just fall in line and just be, a regular civilian or what have you. I got to do something that's that represents a person who had a second lease on life to accomplish those things, that any goals I had set for, any of those type of opportunities that come my way to take them. Because sometimes I have to I can't help but think that perhaps you see in some movies or what have you where they're dreaming, like your life flashes before your eyes before you pass away, and you think about what I would have done if I had lived or what have you. And sometimes I think of myself as being in that spot, like I didn't make it out of Iraq. That
Mm.
somewhere or another, I'm in the hospital bed in a coma or something, thinking about, man, if I would have lived, I would have done this. So I'm living my life right now as if I'm in a dream of what my life would have been had I made it back home safely. So I don't take things for granted. It helps me exercise a lot of discipline and staying away from things that I don't need in my life. And I fall short. I still recognize I'm still God fearing, and opportunities to be philanthropic, opportunities to be mentored, to be mentored, and for me being able to come back and be a professor at Morehouse, and I have the attention of all of these young men and a captive audience. It is my responsibility, and I feel duty bound,
Hmm.
to get to the position where I can be at a Morehouse college teaching and mentoring these young men, but also living a life as an example of having this opportunity, this blessed opportunity that I have to be that individual who looks like he's grateful to still be alive, whereas others did not have the opportunity to come back. But I did. I don't have survivor's guilt or anything like that, but I believe that I'm not going to waste this opportunity. I don't believe God loves me more than the rest of the Marines and sailors and soldiers that have gone before me, but I'm not going to waste this opportunity by not
Mm-hmm.
what's expected of me.
Mm. And I've heard several things in there, but
Mhm.
I will say this: it sounds like probably some of those songs and cadence that you sang help get you through this stuff.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
because when you say, "Hey, I may not return," I know there's some songs because I've talked to other folks in the military, and they said they had the same thing that Tamara had to say. When you stop and you listen to this some of this stuff, I'm gonna charge this hill and I'm gonna kill somebody, but if I don't make it back, bury me. And then they had to stop and think, wait a minute, you mean I could run up that hill and die?
Right. I need to make it back.
But it sounds like, you're listening to some of those things. And it's like, hey, you know what? This is possible, my reality. But guess what? I must learn how to function in this space and in this time that I've been given. Whatever my lot is, it has to be well with my soul. And you've gotten some of those things that you've heard in song, but also it sounds like you had a strong faith, in terms of what your purpose was with God. And so that speaks volumes to me when it comes to that, And so, you know, thinking through where some of our military personnel members are, that might be a place. And that's not saying, Dr. Williams, that your faith was not as big or where it needed to.
I knew my God. And my God is not an author of confusion. And he walks with us differently in different ways. He loves us all, but we all have different paths, and we cannot heed the footsteps of other people. I tell people all the time, I do not believe in lane violations. I believe that people need to get in their own lanes and find their own lanes and run their races. And it doesn't, we don't have to compare races, essentially. I'm thankful. I can tell you that when I saw Dr. Leary at the reunion, I got all choked up because not only just what he shared with you just personally recently, but it was the fact that I realized that our lives were so intertwined that his stories could have very well have been my stories. And so I was thankful that God had spared me from that, and that I was glad that he was safe. And he kept on telling me, he was like, "Don't cry, I'm here with you now." I was like, I know. I am not usually emotional like this, but I was just so thankful of A, that he was still with us, and B, that he had a powerful story. And I told, I didn't tell him right then, but in my mind, I was like, I gotta have him on the show because people need to hear about this type of resiliency. What he hasn't shared yet, but I'm gonna ask him to share. A lot of times when people come through and they're dealing with a lot of the PTSD, they're dealing with a lot of the drama and the trauma, they're trying to figure out ways to adjust. And a lot of times people self-medicate. But Dr. Leary is that's not of his belief. So I wanted him to kind of share a little bit about his relationship with alcohol and drugs.
Okay, so I've never had alcohol. I never tried drugs or anything like that. Maybe unless it was in some cough syrup when I was a kid, but that's about it. So being in the military, you cannot afford to pretend that this is not a fighting organization and that trauma is on the way. Now, when it comes to trauma, you have to pay attention to those who have gone before you. What type of effects that they have having gone through that traumatic event, and what can you do to minimize or to mitigate you're not going to stop at 100%, but to mitigate with those things that you have gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I did prior to going to combat was I paid attention. I paid
Mm-hmm.
attention to war movies. I paid attention to soldiers not being able to sleep at night for the rest of their
Mm-hmm.
lives, and survivor's guilt.
Mm-hmm.
It should have been me, it's not those guys, or I'm the one responsible for all of those people getting harmed. Any of those particular things, I knew not to internalize. So when I would see a 12-year-old child who has his arm blown off, or a 72-year-old man I got to pick up out of the field, because they fight at all ages in other countries. They don't wait till they turn 18 years old. You born a be here, you might want to start training now. But as far as being able to survive after these things are over, because you're still harmed. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times I think Purple Hearts ought to be given to those with PTSD, because we are affected by what we've had to go through. And some of the ways that you have to minimize, it's okay to forget. It's okay to forget. Sometimes losing a little bit of memory is probably the best thing to happen to you, because you're reliving a whole lot of things. I can
Mm-hmm.
talk about these things objectively now because I haven't internalized it. In my mind, I'm telling the specifics of a case that happened and not thinking about it, not adding any type of emotion to it at all. So I will be merely telling the story. And I don't stare at things too long while I was in combat. You know, I looked at people in the faces, whatever, but I'm not burning it in my retina, because there is life after combat. Now, when you first return, you are going to have the nightmares because things are fresh. When you
Mm-hmm.
first return, that adrenaline rush is still high. So you've been made to be at a high state of alert for months and months, and for others, years at a time. Once you leave that environment, the the need to be that high level of adrenaline rush ends abruptly,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Mm-hmm.
can't come down from that right away. So you have the images and the memory that are fresh in your head that you're battling when you're trying to go to sleep at night. And
Mm-hmm.
that high adrenaline rush will have you doing activities you don't need to be doing. One of the things that a lot of service members do when they come back is they buy motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
They buy high speed motorcycles because you've been at a high rate of speed in combat, and now you come back, you can't relax. So in
Mm-hmm.
order to match that same adrenaline rush, you start doing things that are high risk, hanging out with people you don't know for days on end, motorcycles. And for me, it was swimming with sharks, and jumping off a cliff, jumping out of airplanes.
Doc, that sounds like you need a treatment plan. I'm gonna stop you right there with the shark. All right.
I
No.
told you. I told you we needed to have this conversation.
So, but these are the things. I mean, I swam with a whale shark in the wild.
Yeah, he's like, "Are you going to join me with the dolphins?" That'll be a no.
I remember leaving the shores in Oahu, Hawaii. And there's a lot of surfing going on in Hawaii, which means waves are sizable. So when you decide to leave the shore, you're going to fight through those waves to go out in the middle of the ocean to find a pod of dolphins, swim around with them. Now, they're not swimming towards the shore. They're going further out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hanging with them as they swimming further out. And then
Mm-mm.
after I realize, I think I'm satisfied. I look back, I'm so far away from the shore.
Mm-mm.
Now I got to turn around and swim back.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Asked him, was he not concerned about the sharks? I said, were you not concerned about the sharks? He told me that sharks are not around dolphins. I said, oh.
Yeah, they don't necessarily occupy the same spaces. So, but once you leave the pod of dolphins, now it's just shark and shore, in between that. So I swam back, and then of course I got to fight the waves, and they're pulling you back out just to get back to shore again. So those are the type of things that I would do: go in shark cages and things like that. But and do extreme hiking. where the type of hiking where you got to have spikes on the bottom of your shoes.
See, Doc, see what I'm hearing, Doc. You know, we need to work on balancing where that prefrontal cortex is going to take over. Because see, you're operating from that amygdala space right now. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the piece that we would certainly have to work on. Because see, right now, all of that shark stuff, that's some amygdala work right there. That prefrontal cortex is telling me I ain't had nothing to do with that. Now what?
The executive functioning was all the way gone. But he said he used to. And so I wanted to bring up that conversation because a lot of veterans, like you said, when they come back, they tend to engage in self-medication in other ways.
Yes.
I thought it was so interesting that you noted that it's also the high speed, the other adrenaline rushes, and some of the other things that you did that, or it could be massive tattooing and all kinds of stuff that can occur where they're still trying to normalize these feelings and deal with these feelings that they have.
Right. What happens is, obviously I grew up in the church, and I'm being taught how to fight. I'm a mixed martial arts instructor. I can teach up to brown belt. I do have the combat experience. I have seen some things. But once you go through these type of traumatic events, you are not the same person that you were before.
That's right.
And a lot of times what we as veterans do, we battle with the things that are in our heads. We want desperately to go back to way things were, normal way of thinking, and it's not going to get back there. In other ways, I'm thinking of different things that I can't say out loud, but I don't try to fight it because you don't act on those things. You know what I mean? Because when those who are trying to get back to normal will have the biggest fight on their hands. But when you understand and realize I'm a changed person now, and you can operate from this space and still be functional, you can minimize the panic attacks where as far as like, oh my God, this is not who I really want to be. I can't believe I'm thinking this way, and kind of just accept it to a point to where this is the new me, because I can't go back. I can't unring that bell. Or I have to live with this now. Now, how much of this am I going to let affect my life to where I can't function and move forward in life? And I just made a conscious decision that I'm going to continue to move forward in life. And just some of these things are going to go with me, but I'm not going to have it affect my interaction with other people, my goals that I had planned out for myself earlier. When I realized that I thought I was doing too much when it comes to the, swimming with the animals in the wild and going on, these extreme hikes. And I have videos for everything that I just mentioned to you, because if it wasn't a video, it didn't happen. Even my combat. But when I decided that once I retired, that's not going to be my challenges anymore. My challenges now are going to be in education. So when I retired, I immediately went and got my master's degree and my doctorate degree. That in of itself is already difficult. And I wanted to make that the new challenge and to leave that behind, because that will definitely lead to a path of destruction. I was definitely being blessed during those times where I was trying to navigate who this new person is. And I decided I like challenges, don't get me wrong. Clearly I looked them head on and,
Clearly you face your fear.
But
and everybody else's too.
I wanted to take on a challenge that I hadn't done yet. And I decided to let me go ahead and get this doctorate degree. And there were other opportunities that come with that as well. But I had to take some years off from what I was doing before. Living in Hawaii you can do whatever you want, physical fitness wise. I was running marathons, half marathons, trifecta Spartan races. I would swim from one island to the next, hike to the top of that mountain, come back down and swim back. I would have my friends, go alongside me in kayaks just in case there were sharks out there in the water. And these are the kind of things that I would do.
Doug, I can't see that. Let's see. We we might have to do some
I told you he loved
we're
it.
going to do some cognitive assessment because you just put getting a doctorate degree in the same boat as swimming from island to island, hiking a mountain, coming back down the mountain, swimming back from one island back over to the other island through some shark infested water. Now, we've gone through some stuff to get these PhDs, but I cannot say swimming through some sharks.
I did. I can tell you their names too. I promise you. It was some dangerous waters.
All I'm saying,
dangerous waters that I swam to get my doctorate degree.
What I'm saying is, once you recognize those things, redirect. Just like I said earlier, you don't realize a lot of times that you're depressed until Friday.
Yes.
Or Saturday. Wait, hold on. I'm supposed to be happy. What's going on? Oh, you know what? I am depressed. And then you start to think like, you know what? By Tuesday, I'm not going to be depressed no more. And just by saying that out loud, your body is naturally going to start drawing towards things that's going to get you calm down, to lift your spirits up, maybe acting. And then when Tuesday come around, you like, oh yeah, I'm not depressed anymore. That has always been my thing. By Tuesday, I'm not going to be depressed.
Right. That's that positive
recognize
stuff.
it.
Yeah, that's the positive self-talk. As my good sister always say, you have to will yourself a win. Ain't that what you say?
I'm telling you, I'm always willing to win too.
Yeah,
you have to be purposeful about those things. People don't win by accident; they win on purpose.
Right.
And you have to be purposeful. I am thankful that we took our time to have this conversation with you today, because I think it will bless a lot of people realizing that we do still have choices. Our circumstances may not always be the best, but we can choose how we're going to respond to those things. We can choose and make better choices. I appreciate that you understood that swimming with those sharks was not the best choice. It was a good release at the moment, but then you're like, let me do something a little safer than that. Let me put my head in this book. Let me have, this level of learning. And, getting a doctorate degree is a birthing process. So it's a labor of love and distress and many other things. So I am so happy that you found it through education, but also that you're not selfish with the things that you've learned. And that your second lease on life, or your third, fourth, fifth, because I took a lot of trips out there, but that you've taken that information, which is the best thing about education, is that when we know better, that we do better, or at least we should. And so you've taken all of that in, and you're bringing it out to other people. I'm going to have to get some of these mixed martial arts classes.
Well, you knock yourself out with all of that, but I'm going to just keep on at this buffet. That's what I'm going to do. All right. It might not be the most healthiest thing, but that bacon sure tastes good. I'm going to tell you right now.
And after the trauma we endured today, I'm going to need 3 extra slices.
Let me just get 3 pieces, not a whole. I'm going to do 3. Eat all of them too.
You earned your bacon. You earned our bacon too. And we thank you for that service once again. And we thank you for just being willing to share. And especially the emotional aspects, the mental health aspects, because a lot of men don't often jump in there, or they don't feel compelled to share those aspects. They haven't been shown or taught or thought that that's appreciative. But I appreciate you saying that you cried every day. That you didn't try to run for those emotions. You did try to deal with them. You couldn't deal with them the way that other people were dealing with them, but you did acknowledge them. And so that's kudos, to your father for raising a strong Black man.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you. We are very appreciative for you joining us at the table, coming all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, to little old Hampton, Virginia, and spending a little time with us at this here on a nice Sunday afternoon. So we appreciate all of that. So definitely. But we certainly want to continue this conversation, because we have a lot of military in this area that I think will certainly benefit from some more things that you can definitely share with them, and how we can continue to help them. So, thank you for being here. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share what has enabled me to be successful. And I'm always willing to help out. I have that philanthropic spirit and that mentor mentee, and I'm a constant learner, and I just want to be better, and I just want to share as I learn with other people to help them grow.
All right. All right.
Works for me.
All right. Well, I am Dr. Richard Mason.
I'm Dr. Tamara Williams.
And we thank you all for joining us for the most delicious hour in radio right here on Smooth 88 FM WHOV.
The essence of HU.
Keep your fork.
Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally into you.
Thank you for joining us at the table.
Tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for more delicious topical recipes for life on the Sunday Brunch.
On Smooth 88.1 WHOV.